good evening once again. We had to go back into the archive footage because we had a lot of wind here and couldn't send up the drone. Wind's gusting to 30 miles an hour here. It's pretty much very gusty through much of Texas, and in fact out in West Texas we've got some blowing dust out in that area. So let's head to the charts. There's a quick overview of what's going on. And what's dominating the weather is not so much this low pressure area as this high pressure. Obviously, the high pressure has a lot more areal extent, and we can see it covering all of the southeast except southern Florida, all of the south central U.S., all of the plains, and pretty much all of the north and eastern U.S. there. So that cold air is feeding into the eastern side of this low pressure area. These low pressure systems are partially fueled by latent heat release, and the moisture has been kind of slow to come up. Most of it is a little bit elevated, and then the lower level flow is running like that, and it is dry. Let's take a look at the mixing ratios. And here it is coming up, and we can see that the moisture hasn't improved a little bit from yesterday, but the 10 gram per kilogram line, which is close to about 50 Fahrenheit, is still south of I-10 there. And we're pretty much looking at some dry dew points in Texas. Here's the plots. Looks like they are coming up into the 30s and 40s, but that is very low. And let's zoom in on Texas where we have the weather going on. There's those gusty winds out there, and if you look in the right side of the plots right there, you can see gusts up to 43 knots, which is going to be around 48 miles an hour there at Big Spring. And we've got gusts pretty much over 30 throughout much of the South Plains and Permian Basin there. So we do have that warm front coming up, and the problem is we don't have very many stations down in Mexico. But we can see 96 there at Presidio, and up in the mountains, almost 80. And we contrast that with the 60s out around Midland, Abilene, and Lubbock. So the warm front is definitely well to the south. And if we had more moisture, we might be looking at something like Zaragoza, 1987. There was a tornado that hit way out here. It was a very similar pattern here, except there was a lot more moisture, and this was along one of these warm fronts that was down to the south. Looking up north, we can also see some cold Canadian air coming in. Contrast these 50s with upper 30s up in Clayton and Raton. So that's a little push of cold air coming southward. And as the main baroclinic low pushes to the east, we're going to expect that cold air to wrap around the back side there. All right, let's head into the charts. We'll start with the upper air pattern. And this is about what it looks like right now. It looks like we're bringing out a little bit of upper level energy here. It's got the appearance of a shortwave, but I think that may be possibly some interaction there with maybe some of the convection and especially some of the orographics there. I'm not too sure what's going on there exactly. Let me try running that back and get some continuity there. Yeah, it's very hard to tell what's going on in this region. Might have to wait till the system pulls out a little bit further into the lower elevations of Texas, and there it does look like there's somewhat of a shortwave right there. This is about midnight tonight. So if we back that up, I guess it's probably that feature right there. I'm not. We probably would have to take a look at some of the other models that are out there to really resolve that. But that's one of the problems analyzing these dynamic fields and vertical velocity and so on. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're looking at vertical velocity here. I picked the wrong product. I thought that field looked a little bit noisy there. Okay, this looks a little bit better. We do have a little bit of noise still down there. Okay, we are looking at the vorticity field, and yeah, this looks more characteristic of convection out over the higher terrain there. And let's roll that out onto the plains. And yeah, I guess we've probably got maybe a weak upper level trough maybe, or there could be some oscillations there from that convection out in West Texas. However, this is definitely a shortwave right there. And I'm going to roll this backwards, and we can trace that back to Arizona. So some of the energy that we have out there in Arizona this evening, that's going to be out in Texas tomorrow morning. So let me roll that forward. And you can see that trough coming into West Texas there. And then by midday, looks like it's moving towards the I-35 region. And then by 21Z, that's approaching East Texas there. I know yesterday we were looking for convection around Temple, Stephenville, and so on. However, the shortwave does look to be coming out pretty early. So I'm not too sure that the upper level patterns are going to be in phase with the convection and heating out in that area tomorrow. So we're kind of overturning things a little bit early, I think. Let's roll this forward. We'll look at this in more detail in a bit. There's the upper level low there spinning across northeast Oklahoma on Sunday. Looks like we've got some upper level lift working across the southeast U.S. there. Some ridging coming in from the west and another trough coming in from California there. And this next one, I guess it's heading for the Central Plains there. Okay, let's go ahead and get back on track here. Let me pull up the sector for West Texas. Okay, there you can see some convection there in the Texas Panhandle, the tail end around the Lubbock area, and only a few cells around the Fort Stockton area. So the convection is a little bit on the weak side. This is radar indicated precipitation. And let's look at the thermodynamics. I'm going to bring up the 100 millibar mixed layer cape. And the better cape is in the eastern Big Bend around Marathon and down to Sanderson, kind of in that area right there. So it's a very thin sliver, and that's going to be at the nose of the moisture that's coming up from Del Rio and northern Mexico. Okay, the upper level pattern. This is a 250 millibar chart there at 34,000 feet. Polar front jet coming around the base of that trough into New Mexico and Colorado there. So the better lift, of course, is going to be along and north of the jet. That's obviously something I've been stating for the past couple of days, and that kind of ties into some of the dynamics that we talked about. And south of the jet, that's one problem we have with these thunderstorms out there. There's just not much in the way of dynamics working across Texas. So some of the better transverse circulation is kind of displaced kind of far to the north there. The short waves are kind of out of range there. We're a little bit too far south, so we're not getting the good intensification of the lapse rates in the mid and upper troposphere. And that's having an impact there on stability. And you can see what the 850 millibar chart was looking like this morning. Only 7 degrees there at 850 at Del Rio, and dew points around 36 there at Midland, and there at Fort Worth, minus 32 Celsius. There's a lot of dry air. I can see minus 40 there in Illinois, minus 17. We've really brought down quite a bit of polar air. into the eastern U.S. there. It is modified, but you can't really add moisture back into that air mass. That's going to take some time. It's going to have to hit that Gulf and recirculate up to the north and so on. Okay, here's the isobars in thickness. We can see that the frontal system out in Texas is kind of weak. Just based on continuity, the warm front is going to be sitting out there. A little bit of support there from the thickness field, and that would probably be the cold front there through El Paso and south of Douglas. And up to the north, a little bit of an occluded front, and we probably pick up that Canadian front coming south through Colorado there. Pretty quiet on the west coast and very quiet on the east coast with that high pressure kind of dominating the weather from the Great Lakes down to Virginia and the Carolinas. I decided to also pull up the 700 and 850 thickness. See down here it says 850, 700 millibars. So this is sampling where we might find fronts in the middle troposphere. Now, I really didn't see anything here, but if we had a more well-developed cyclone out in the western U.S., we would probably be able to use this chart and pick up some of the structure. I think up here, off the coast of British Columbia, maybe a little support there for an upper front. The techniques are basically the same. Look for gradients of tight thickness and keep the boundaries on the south side of that. And here's what we've got with the storms right now. We definitely got towers trying to go up, and you can see the long shadows being cast out to the east. And there's some low-level moisture. This is mostly upslope flow. Dew points in that area, as we've seen, are kind of low, so that's not really indicative of rich tropical moisture. But yeah, we do got the towers trying to go up, and they definitely look elevated. You can see the movement on those is very fast to the east. So these are not rooted in the boundary layer. This here probably is, down around Fort Stockton. And that's pretty much it as far as convection. So any chasers along I-10 there, probably seeing a little bit of an early show this evening. Okay, let me take a look and see what's going on in chat here. We got Carl Berghoff and Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 66. Shirley Keast with 47 in Michigan. Got Mike Estwick and Fun with Tech, and Mick there in Australia. David Moore, very windy in northwest Texas, hoping for rain. Rat there in Tucson, mid-70s. Ron Chalfant is here. Mike Estwick reporting 53 in Denver with passing showers, was 59 earlier. Christian Flock hoping for some rain there in Oklahoma, 65 degrees, and they are getting a pretty strong drought there in the panhandles in northwest Oklahoma. Burl H has 56 in Iowa City. We have Sue M here, David Holcomb. David Moore saw no tornadoes reported in April in Oklahoma. Yeah, that's definitely very, very surprising there. Jeff Krob is still at work. Megan John, 47 in Minnesota. Let's see, we got Ryan Toomeys down there in Florida, reporting on the grass fires. 2 firefighters arrested for setting ablaze a multitude of grass fires in western Oklahoma. And that's a theme that I've seen often in the headlines there. Volunteer firefighters, some of them, I guess they are looking for work, as grim as that sounds. Fun with Tech mentions the Storm Chasing Handbook there, helping out another viewer there. Fun with Tech mentions several of the biggest fires in California were set by an arson investigator. Good grief. Midiphoto.com, reporting from Germany, can't wait to chase the storms in the plains. And yes, indeed, Mike Estrick, I did do a McItis presentation about a year ago. I think if you just search the channel for McItis, that should come up there. Okay, I think that's pretty much all the chat there, so we'll keep things moving along. There's not much in the way of storms this evening. So I guess Texas is getting a little bit of a break, but they are getting the precip up north where they need that. Probably not a whole lot of precip, though. You can see the very strong dry slot coming in the backside. Yesterday we saw that in Arizona coming up into Utah. So that's shifted to the east. And that's that very strong descent there on the backside of that main trough. And then we do have one more little short wave. We picked that out on the chart earlier, and that's going to be coming into Texas tomorrow. Okay, we'll take a look at a SCUT here. I'm going to pull up Del Rio. This is for this morning. And we are looking kind of dry there, even in Del Rio. So dew points around upper 30s to around 40. Most of the moisture we have there is in the mid-levels, approaching 50 degrees there, between about 4,000 and 6,000 feet. A little bit of upper-level moisture, too. And we are getting a little bit of steepening of the lapse rates up there, but we are also very strongly capped. And there's Fort Worth. Some very dry conditions aloft there, and moisture is also showing 30s dew points. Lots of mid-level warm air. And a little bit of steep lapse rates up there above the 700 millibar level. And then we'll take a look at Amarillo there. Again, same story, dry air in the low levels. And just above that, around 5,000 feet off the ground, dew points approaching about 40 degrees there. So this is definitely not a classic springtime event. Even down on the Gulf Coast there, Corpus Christi having trouble there. A little bit of dry air just above the surface, and near the surface, dew points are only in the 50s. Okay, so that probably will have an impact on things tomorrow. So let's go ahead and look at the forecast tomorrow. I'm going to start with a high-resolution rapid refresh model. This will cover the overnight period. And, yeah, the model is picking up those thunderstorms around Fort Stockton really well. And let's see the overall trend on that. Looks elevated, very fast motion, and it's pretty much gone by midnight. Then we start picking up some, looks like some elevated stuff there, probably with that elevated moist layer with the stronger upper level lift and the colder temperatures coming in. So these are not surface-based either. However, they will form up into a little bit of an MCS there northwest of Fort Worth up in Oklahoma during the overnight hours towards dawn. So hopefully that will help out Oklahoma at least a little bit. So these are going to be kind of cold showers there, and then by tomorrow afternoon, well, that's the end of the run there. Let's pick that up with the NAM. Anyway, that kind of agrees there with those thunderstorms on the tail end, not really doing much of anything past dark. We form up our MCS there during the overnight hours. fact, you can kind of see the ridging there in the pressure field. That's the outflow. See there, you can kind of see that detail there. That's the cold pool there. And here is the inverted trough. Anyway, for tomorrow, let's see, it's going to be kind of cool. I'm sure we're still going to have that easterly flow coming up into the Dallas area. And let's see here, showers moving eastward during the day. It's going to be kind of cloudy and dreary. And then back here where we have a little bit of clearing, the models are still trying to go for a little deep convection southwest of Fort Worth. And I'm surprised that after like 3 months later, it's still trying to put that convection there. So I guess that's a good signal that we may have something trying to push through the cap. And let's take a look at the forecast soundings. Actually, not much of a cap there at all. Looks like a little bit of residual moisture there, but you can see the instability is not really all that great. Running about 1,000 right there, which is just marginal for thunderstorm activity. So we've probably got just a little pocket of moisture there along Interstate 35, that in combination with the heating and the cold upper level temperatures and maybe some upper level lift and the cap removal, that's probably helping a little bit with that. Anyway, that's showing to not persist much after dark there, so that's going to be gone. And then the high pressure will be moving in tomorrow night. And the activity looks very disorganized moving into the Gulf Coast states there. Looks like by Sunday, this is around max heating time, and here we're seeing a few discrete cells. So we'll probably have to take a look at the models tomorrow and see what's going on with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick up the GFS and see if there's any change in this pattern coming up. Very strong gradient there with all that cold air pushing westward there. And here's our baroclinic low down there in Texas tomorrow morning. And we can see that moving eastward. This is tomorrow evening. And then the cold air comes around the backside. And then going into Sunday, there's the surface systems. We've got the warm front just to the south. Looks like we got flow coming up from the Gulf, so we've probably got some decent potential there for a little bit of severe weather. Maybe in that area right there. Looks like another push of cold air coming in from the north. And we actually develop a baroclinic system there in Wyoming for Monday. And this has got a pretty strong push of cold air there. And snow showers in southern Montana around Billings, Gillette, and Miles City. And that'll move into the Dakotas, and it looks like the snow activity kind of dissipates a little bit. Anyway, strong cold front coming south. So that'll sweep through around midweek. More high pressure coming in, and looks like another surge of cold air coming south once again. So we're just kind of keeping up this winter pattern, the 540 line coming all the way down to South Dakota and Minnesota. And then towards the end of the week, looks like we have just enough moisture in Texas maybe to get a little thunderstorm activity along that cold front, but that should move through pretty quickly. And here's another high pressure area coming south. I'm sure a lot of chasers out there are just beside themselves with this cold air, just one after the other coming south. I mean, we should really be heading into spring around this time of the year, but it's just not going to do it there. All right, let's see what comes up towards the end of the run. Oh, another cold air mass here. Okay, let's see where that goes. Okay, that's going to head more to the northeast U.S. So that'll probably give the southern plains a chance to recharge there. So we're talking about March 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That's probably going to be when we transition into spring here, assuming that keeps moving to the east. Okay, so yeah, this is probably our pattern change coming up. Over 300 hours out, but we'll see what happens. And there's just kind of a weak high-pressure area coming through. That shouldn't be much of a problem, and we get to the end of the run. So I think once the first week in May gets here, we should see things start to change. And then we'll start doing some hand analysis and covering these severe weather events. That should be interesting. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of weather, so I think 30 minutes of discussion is probably about the sweet spot there. And just a quick look at chat there. MIDIphoto.com can't wait for the 3 weeks in the U.S. in May. Doing a chase vacation there. Carl Berghoff agreeing the severe switch may flip on by the first week in May. And a little discussion in chat there about weather books. So if you're catching this on the rebroadcast, seeing the show live would give you a chance to ask other viewers about resources like that that help them. So not only my books, which are at weathergraphics.com, but there's also other good books out there also, like I think Meteorology Today by Ahrens is a pretty good one, and there's also the classics like Bluestein. He's got a good synoptic meteorology 2-volume set. I'd recommend getting a hold of that. Some really good stuff in there. And of course there's a meteorology book by it's in the other room, I can't remember. It's from the people at Penn State. I know Paul Markowski and Yvette Richardson. That's a really, really good one. So that should give you a few things to look for. So I think that'll probably do it for tonight. Thanks all for watching, and I think tomorrow we're going to do our usual Saturday break, and we'll be back on Sunday. All right, have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you most likely on Sunday. Take care.